My name is Elsa, 32, and 7 months ago I discovered something in my husband Derek's car that changed everything. While searching for registration documents, I found hidden lubricant and erectile dysfunction pills tucked away in a secret compartment of his glove box. These weren't items we used together. My hands trembled as realization dawned my husband of 7 years was having an affair. Instead of confronting him immediately, I channeled my marketing strategist skills into creating the perfect plan. What happened next shocked everyone, including myself. Before I continue this story of betrayal and calculated revenge, take a moment to drop a comment, letting me know where you're watching from, hit that subscribe button, and prepare yourself for what happened when I decided to expose everything. Derek and I met 9 years ago at my college roommate's wedding. I was a bridesmaid. He was a groomsman. Our meeting felt like something straight out of a romantic comedy. He accidentally stepped on my dress during the reception, tearing the hem. While I was initially annoyed, his genuine apology and offer to pay for repairs turned into drinks, which turned into dinner the following evening, which eventually turned into love. He was charming in ways I hadn't experienced before, attentive, thoughtful, with a sense of humor that matched mine perfectly. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. He proposed on our 1-year anniversary during a weekend trip to the coast. The ring was perfect, classic, with a personal touch showing he'd been paying attention when I casually mentioned my preferences months earlier. Our wedding 2 years after meeting was everything I'd dreamed of, intimate yet elegant, surrounded by 120 of our closest friends and family. Everyone commented on how perfect we seemed together, how our vows brought tears to their eyes, how they could feel the love radiating between us. We were that couple, the one others looked at with a mixture of admiration and envy. After the wedding, we settled into our life together. I built my career as a marketing strategist at a mid-sized agency, eventually working my way up to senior strategist with my own team. I've always been detail-oriented and analytical, skills that served me well professionally. I love creating comprehensive campaigns, examining data for insights others might miss, and developing strategies that connect with target audiences. My colleagues often joke about my color-coded planning systems and immaculate spreadsheets, but they come to me when they need someone thorough. Derek worked as a sales executive for Meridian Pharmaceuticals, a position that came with an impressive salary but also required frequent travel, at least 1 week per month, sometimes more. He was good at his job, regularly exceeding his targets and earning bonuses that helped us afford our comfortable suburban home with the wraparound porch I'd always wanted. We built a life that looked perfect on paper and on our social media accounts. Weekends spent renovating our home, summer barbecues with friends, holiday parties that everyone looked forward to attending. We talked about starting a family since our second anniversary, but agreed to wait until we were financially stable and established in our careers. 3 years into our marriage, we decided we were ready. I remember the night we officially decided to try a bottle of wine on our back deck, holding hands under the stars, talking excitedly about nursery colors and potential names. We both wanted 2 children, preferably close in age. Derek seemed as enthusiastic as I was, suggesting we convert the home office into a nursery and researching the best school districts in our area. The first few months of trying were fun, spontaneous intimacy, tracking my cycle with an app, giggling about how we'd tell our families when it happened. But as 6 months passed, then 9, then 12, with no positive pregnancy test, the fun faded. I began taking my temperature every morning, using ovulation predictor kits, and scheduling our intimacy around my fertile windows. Sex became less about connection and more about conception. After 18 months of trying without success, I suggested we both get fertility testing. My results came back normal. Derek's initial tests suggested slightly lower motility than ideal, but nothing that should prevent conception. The doctor recommended we continue trying naturally for a few more months while making some lifestyle adjustments, less alcohol, more exercise, vitamin supplements. That's when I first noticed the shift in our relationship. Derek became increasingly distant. Our intimate moments, once so frequent and passionate, dwindled to occasional perfunctory encounters. that usually coincided with my fertility app notifications. He began working later, traveling more frequently, and spending weekends catching up on work, rather than with me. I tried everything to bridge the growing gap between us. I planned special date nights, initiated intimacy outside my fertile windows to show it wasn't just about making a baby, suggested weekend getaways to reconnect. Sometimes these efforts would work temporarily. Derek would seem like his old self for a day or two, attentive and loving, but inevitably, he would retreat back into his distant state. Friends started making casual comments that intensified my concerns. My colleague Jen mentioned seeing Derek at a restaurant downtown when he had told me he was working late. My running partner said she thought she saw his car parked near a boutique hotel one Saturday afternoon when he was supposedly at a work conference in another city. Each comment added to the knot of anxiety growing in my stomach. Still, I pushed aside my suspicions. We had built this perfect life together, surely we were just going through a rough patch. All couples struggled sometimes, especially when dealing with fertility issues. I threw myself into maintaining our image, posting happy photos from the rare good moments, hosting dinner parties where we played the role of the perfect couple, telling my concerned mother that everything was fine when she asked why Derek seemed so distracted at family gatherings. I made excuses for him to others and to myself. He was under pressure at work. He was concerned about our fertility struggles. He was just processing disappointment in his own way. I convinced myself that if I was patient enough, supportive enough, loving enough, he would come back to me emotionally. But as the months passed, the distance between us grew. Derek started keeping his phone face down and taking calls in another room. He changed his password, which he'd always shared with me before. He became critical of small things, my cooking, my clothes, the way I organized the pantry, things that had never bothered him previously. Looking back, I can see all the red flags clearly. But at the time, I was too close to the situation, too invested in our perfect life narrative, too afraid of what acknowledging the truth might mean. It's amazing what we can convince ourselves not to see when seeing would hurt too much. I still remember exactly how the sun slanted through the car windows that Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. Derek had asked me to find our vehicle registration for an insurance update while he was on a 3-day business trip. I'd searched the obvious places, the center console, the documentation folder we kept in the trunk, before finally opening the glove compartment. The registration wasn't immediately visible, so I removed everything to search more thoroughly. That's when I noticed the panel at the back didn't sit flush with the rest of the compartment. I pressed it gently and it popped open, revealing a hidden compartment I never knew existed. Inside were a bottle of lubricant and a prescription box of erectile dysfunction medication. I stared at the items, my brain refusing to process what I was seeing. The lubricant wasn't a brand we'd ever used together. The prescription was recent, filled just 2 weeks earlier. My hands began to shake uncontrollably and a wave of nausea washed over me. I had to lean against the car to steady myself as the implications became impossible to ignore. For a moment I tried to find innocent explanations. Maybe the medication was for some embarrassing health issue he hadn't wanted to discuss. Perhaps the lubricant was recommended by his doctor along with the pills. But deep down I knew. These weren't items he was using with me. Our intimate life had dwindled to almost nothing in recent months, and when we did connect physically, these items were never part of the equation. My first instinct was to call him immediately, to scream and demand explanations. My finger hovered over his contact information on my phone. But something stopped me, a voice of caution in my head. If I confronted him now with only this circumstantial evidence, he would have time to create explanations, delete messages, warn whoever he was seeing to be more careful. I needed more information. I returned to our house, the items from the hidden compartment now tucked into my purse. My marketing brain, trained to research thoroughly before developing any strategy, took over. I needed facts, data, irrefutable evidence before deciding my next move. That evening, I began my investigation. I logged into our shared cell phone account online and examined Derek's call history. There it was, a phone number that appeared repeatedly, often called late at night or during his supposed work trips. The calls sometimes lasted over an hour. I wrote down the number and used a reverse lookup service to try to identify it, but it was registered to a generic A. Lewis with no additional information available. Next, I accessed our joint credit card accounts. Going back 6 months, I found a pattern: charges at upscale restaurants where we'd never dined together, a boutique hotel downtown on days Derek claimed to be working late, flower deliveries that never arrived at our home. Each discovery was like a physical blow, but I forced myself to continue methodically documenting every suspicious transaction in a spreadsheet. The following morning, while Derek was showering, I quickly installed a location tracking app on his phone. He never noticed. He was too confident in his deception to imagine I would invade his privacy this way. Part of me felt guilty for the surveillance, but that guilt was overwhelmed by my need to know the truth. 3 days later, Derek told me he needed to work late to prepare for a client meeting. The tracking app told a different story. He drove directly from his office to Bellanotte, an intimate Italian restaurant across town. I made a split-second decision to follow him. Changing into nondescript clothing and grabbing a pair of sunglasses, I drove to the restaurant and parked where I could observe the entrance. 20 minutes after Derek arrived, a woman approached the restaurant. Even from a distance, I could see she was attractive. Tall, slender, with expertly highlighted hair that caught the early evening sunlight. She moved with confidence, dressed in an outfit that suggested both professional success and careful attention to appearance. Derek met her at the door, and what I saw next shattered any lingering doubt. He kissed her. Not a friendly peck on the cheek, but the familiar, comfortable kiss of lovers. They disappeared inside, but I couldn't bring myself to follow. Instead, I sat in my car, taking deep breaths to combat the lightheadedness threatening to overwhelm me. When they eventually emerged 2 hours later, I was ready with my phone camera, capturing several clear images of them together. His hand on the small of her back, another kiss as they parted ways, the lingering look between them that spoke volumes. That night, I did a deep dive into social media, determined to identify this woman. It took hours of methodical searching, cross-referencing mutual connections and locations, but eventually I found her: Amanda Lewis, a pharmaceutical buyer for a large hospital network. Further investigation revealed she was married to Richard Lewis, the purchasing director for a chain of medical clinics that represented a major potential account for Derek's company. The final piece clicked into place with sickening clarity. Derek wasn't just having an affair, he was sleeping with the wife of a potential client. He was potentially jeopardizing his career, our financial security, and our marriage all at once. The recklessness of it stunned me. For the next week, I continued gathering evidence. I tracked their meetings through the app, always on Wednesdays, always culminating at the Lakeside Hotel around 3 p.m. I documented every call, every text, every unexplained absence. I built a comprehensive file that left no room for denial or alternative explanations. When I had enough evidence to be absolutely certain, I pulled into an empty parking lot and finally allowed myself to feel everything I'd been suppressing. Alone in my car, I screamed until my throat was raw. I sobbed until no more tears would come. I pounded the steering wheel until my hands ached. The betrayal was complete and undeniable. The future I had planned, the family we had talked about creating together, the trust I had placed in him, all of it was built on lies. As the initial shock subsided, something shifted inside me. The devastated wife was still there, heartbroken and betrayed. But alongside her emerged someone else, a strategist with an eye for detail and a newly discovered capacity for calculated action. This version of me didn't want a simple confrontation. She wanted consequences. She wanted justice. She wanted Derek and Amanda to experience the public exposure and humiliation they deserved. Driving home, I began formulating a plan that would change all our lives forever. I requested a week of emergency personal leave from work, something I'd never done in my entire career. My boss, concerned by my uncharacteristic request, asked few questions when I explained I was dealing with a personal crisis. If only she knew the extent of what I was planning. While Derek thought I was at the office each day, I was actually setting up an elaborate trap from our guest room. My marketing strategy skills, the ability to plan detailed campaigns, anticipate reactions, coordinate timing became the foundation for what I was about to do. First, I needed to learn everything possible about Amanda and Richard Lewis. Social media provided a wealth of information where they lived their regular hangouts, mutual friends, recent vacations. LinkedIn filled in professional details. A few careful searches revealed they had been married for 5 years, lived in an upscale neighborhood across town, and had no children. Richard's social media presence suggested he had no idea about his wife's infidelity. He frequently posted loving tributes to Amanda, tagged her in future vacation plans, and referred to her as his forever. The more I learned about Richard, the more my anger extended to include Amanda. Here was a man who seemed genuinely devoted to his wife, completely unaware she was betraying him every Wednesday afternoon. His ignorance mirrored my own, creating an unexpected sense of kinship between us two trusting spouses being made fools of by the people who had promised to love us. I created a new email account under a generic name and crafted a careful message to Richard. I didn't reveal Derek's identity or provide specific details about the affair. Instead, I wrote that I had concerning information about his wife's activities and suggested he pay attention to her Wednesday afternoons. Just enough to plant a seed of doubt, not enough to reveal my full plan. Meanwhile, I continued tracking Derek's movements through the app. The pattern was consistent. He and Amanda met for lunch or drinks before heading to the lakeside hotel, always arriving separately, but within minutes of each other. They typically spent 2 to 3 hours together before departing again separately to maintain the illusion they weren't connected. I called the hotel posing as Amanda and booked a room for the following Wednesday. Not their usual room, but one on the same floor. I paid extra for a specific room location, explaining I wanted a special view for an anniversary surprise. The front desk staff, accustomed to handling romantic gestures, happily accommodated my request. Next, I purchased a high-quality digital camera with excellent zoom capabilities. If this plan was going to work, I needed irrefutable evidence. I practiced using it until I could quickly capture clear images in various lighting conditions. I scouted the hotel, learning the layout, identifying optimal positions for what I had in mind. My friend Natalie became my confidant during this process. When I first revealed what I'd discovered and what I was planning, her immediate reaction was concern. "Elsa, I understand you're hurt, but this seems extreme," she said, watching me organize my evidence files. "Why not just confront Derek privately, file for divorce, and move on with dignity?" "Because they've been laughing at me," I replied, my voice steady despite the pain behind the words. "Every time they've been together, they've been mocking my ignorance, my trust. They deserve more than a private conversation and a quiet exit." But a public confrontation with Richard there too. That's not just exposing Derek, it's blowing up 4 lives at once. I looked up from my planning documents, meeting her eyes directly. 4 lives are already blown up, Natalie. Derek and Amanda just don't know it yet. And Richard deserves the truth as much as I do. Natalie eventually understood my need for this specific type of closure, though she insisted on being available afterward, knowing I would need support once the adrenaline wore off. Her concern touched me. At least I had one person in my life whose love wasn't an illusion. As my plan took shape, maintaining normalcy at home became increasingly difficult. Derek continued his routine of lies, late work nights, weekend conferences, sudden phone calls that required him to step outside. He never suspected that I tracked his every move, cataloged his every deception. When he kissed me goodbye each morning, I forced myself to smile, to play the role of unsuspecting wife for just a little longer. The hardest part was enduring his occasional attempts at intimacy. Rare occasions that I now recognized corresponded with guilt, usually after he'd spent particularly long periods with Amanda. Each touch made my skin crawl, but I endured it, reminding myself the charade would soon be over. I made excuses when possible: headaches, early meetings, exhaustion, anything to avoid the connection that now felt like another layer of betrayal. 1 week before my plan was to unfold, I sent another email to Richard this time with more specific information. I mentioned the Lakeside Hotel by name and suggested he might want to surprise his wife there the following Wednesday at 4 o'clock. I included the room number where Derek and Amanda usually met, obtained from my careful tracking of their patterns. I still didn't identify Derek or explicitly mention an affair maintaining plausible deniability while ensuring Richard would have enough information to act. 3 days before the planned confrontation, I made my final preparations. I packed an overnight bag that I hid in my car trunk, clothes, toiletries, essential documents. I transferred half of our joint savings to a new account in my name only. I scheduled a meeting with a divorce attorney for the day after the confrontation. Each action was another bridge burned another step away from the marriage I had believed in so completely. The night before, Derek and I had dinner together. He was unusually attentive, asking about my work, suggesting a weekend getaway the following month. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was making plans for our future while I was executing the end of our marriage. I wondered if he sensed something, if some subconscious awareness of the impending catastrophe had prompted this sudden interest and connection. As we cleared the dinner dishes, he hugged me from behind, nuzzling my neck the way he used to when we first married. "I love you, you know," he murmured, "more than you realize." I turned in his arms, studying his face. The face I had loved, trusted, built my life around. I searched for signs of deception, for any indication he was conscious of his duplicity. All I saw was the comfortable confidence of a man who believed his secrets were safe, who thought he could compartmentalize his life into separate, non-intersecting segments. "I know," I replied, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. That night I barely slept, mentally reviewing every detail of my plan, anticipating potential complications, preparing responses to various scenarios. By morning I was exhausted but resolute. When Derek kissed me goodbye, his overnight bag already packed for his client dinner that would run too late to drive home, I knew it was the last time I would see him as my husband rather than the stranger he had revealed himself to be. "Good luck with your meeting," I said, the double meaning lost on him. "Thanks, babe. Don't wait up." He smiled, confident in his deception. As his car disappeared down our tree-lined street, I whispered to the empty house, "I won't." Wednesday dawned clear and cool, perfect weather for the storm I was about to create. I dressed with care in a tailored navy blue dress that projected confidence and professionalism. My makeup was flawless, hair styled impeccably. If I was going to publicly expose my husband's affair, I wanted to look my absolute best doing it. Derek had left early for a client breakfast that the tracking app revealed was actually coffee with Amanda. I watched their icons move together through the city before separating him to his office, her presumably to hers. They were following their usual Wednesday pattern, completely unaware that today would be different. At 1 o'clock, I drove to the Lakeside Hotel. The elegant lobby was quiet at this hour, just a few business travelers checking in, and hotel staff polishing already gleaming surfaces. I approached the front desk with the confidence of someone who belonged there. "Good afternoon. I have a room reserved under Amanda Lewis," I said, smoothly presenting the credit card I'd used for the booking. The young man at the desk smiled professionally. "Of course, Ms. Lewis. You're in room 412. Would you like assistance with your luggage?" "No need. I'm traveling light today." I accepted the key card with a smile that revealed nothing of my intentions. Room 412 was perfect, located directly across from room 415, where Derek and Amanda conducted their weekly betrayals. I set up my camera on a tripod positioned to capture the hallway, particularly the area around room 415. Then I settled in to wait, checking the tracking app periodically to monitor their movements. At 2:45, Derek's icon began moving toward the hotel. My heart raced despite my determination to remain calm. 15 minutes later, Amanda's icon followed the same path. I positioned myself near the peephole of my room, waiting to confirm their arrival in person. Right on schedule. I watched through the peephole as Derek walked down the hallway, overnight bag in hand, checking his phone, probably texting Amanda to confirm their arrangement. He unlocked room 415 and disappeared inside. 7 minutes later, Amanda arrived, glancing quickly around the empty hallway before using her own key card to enter the same room. The familiar ease of their movements revealed how routine this had become for them, a choreographed dance of deception they had perfected. I sent Richard a text from a prepaid phone I'd purchased for this purpose. "Your wife is in room 415 at the Lakeside Hotel right now. If you want the truth, come at 4 Juarez." I included a photo of Amanda entering the hotel that I'd just captured, not explicit enough to reveal what she was doing, but clear evidence she was indeed there. The next hour was the longest of my life. I double-checked my camera, reviewed my evidence files, and rehearsed what I would say. Despite my careful planning, doubt crept in. Was I really prepared to create such a public scene? Was revenge worth the additional trauma? But then I remembered every lie. Every night I'd spent alone while Derek was with her, every time he'd touched me after being with her, and my resolve strengthened. At 3:55, my phone buzzed with a text from the prepaid number. "I'm in the lobby." This was at the point of no return. I took a deep breath, gathered my evidence folder and camera, and left room 412. In the lobby, I immediately spotted Richard, tall, distinguished, with slightly graying temples and the confident posture of a successful businessman. His expression was a mixture of confusion and determination. I approached him directly. "Mr. Lewis, I'm Elsa Morgan." His eyes widened slightly. "You're the one who's been contacting me." "Yes, I believe our spouses are having an affair. They're in room 415 right now." His face paled, but his voice remained steady. "How do you know this?" I opened the folder showing him selected photos of Derek and Amanda together entering the hotel on previous Wednesdays, kissing in the restaurant parking lot, their cars parked side by side at a remote lookout point. "I've been tracking them for weeks. I have phone records, credit card statements, everything." Richard studied the evidence, his professional composure cracking as the reality sank in. "Why tell me? Why not just confront your husband?" "Because you deserve to know the truth as much as I do, and because I believe consequences should be public when the deception has been so complete." He was silent for a long moment, processing everything. Finally, he looked up. "What do you propose we do?" "We go upstairs together and confront them. Right now." The elevator ride to the 4th floor was tense with unspoken emotions. Richard stared at the changing floor numbers, his jaw clenched tightly. I could see him mentally preparing, just as I had been doing for weeks. "They'll try to lie," I warned quietly. "They'll say it's the first time, that it didn't mean anything. Don't believe them. This has been happening every Wednesday afternoon for at least 6 months." He nodded grimly. "I appreciate your directness, Mrs. Morgan." "Elsa," I corrected. "Under the circumstances, I think we can use first names." We reached room 415 and paused outside. Through the door, we could hear muffled laughter and conversation. Richard looked at me, a silent question in his eyes. I nodded and handed him the key card I'd obtained from the front desk earlier, another piece of my elaborate plan that had required convincing the manager I was planning a surprise anniversary celebration. Richard inserted the card. The light flashed green. He pushed the door open. The scene inside was exactly what we expected, yet still shocking to witness. Derek and Amanda were on the bed, partially dressed, his shirt off, her blouse unbuttoned. They froze at the sound of the door, their expressions transforming from passion to horror as they registered who stood in the doorway. "Richard," Amanda scrambled to button her blouse, her face draining of color. "What are you? How did you—" Derek's eyes locked with mine, recognition and panic flooding his features. "Elsa, what the hell is this?" "I think that's our question," I replied calmly. Stepping into the room with Richard. "How long did you think this could continue without us finding out?" Derek jumped up, reaching for his shirt. "This isn't what it looks like." Richard's laugh was harsh and humorless. "Really? Because it looks exactly like my wife is having an affair with you in a hotel room on a Wednesday afternoon when you're both supposed to be working." Amanda began crying the dramatic tears I suspected were calculated to evoke sympathy. Richard, please, we can talk about this privately. Like you two have been talking privately for months, I interjected, opening my evidence folder. Every Wednesday afternoon. Always this hotel. Plus dinners at Bella Notte weekends when Derek was supposedly at conferences, late nights at the office that were actually spent together. Derek's expression shifted from panic to anger. You've been spying on me, tracking me? Don't you dare try to make me the villain here. I said, my voice remaining steady, despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm me. Yes, I investigated, after I found these in your car. I pulled out the lubricant and pill box that had started this whole journey, watching his face as understanding dawned. By now the commotion had attracted attention. A couple passing in the hallway stopped to stare. A hotel housekeeper paused her cart outside the open door, eyes wide at the unfolding drama. Derek noticed the audience and lowered his voice, trying to regain control of the situation. Elsa, please, let's go somewhere private to discuss this. No, I said firmly. I'm done with privacy and secrets. You didn't seem concerned about privacy when you were telling Amanda about our fertility struggles, when you were sleeping with her in the same week you told me you were too tired to try for the baby we supposedly both wanted. This revelation seemed to hit Richard particularly hard. He turned to Amanda. You told me you weren't ready for children yet. Was that a lie too? Were you planning to start a family with him instead? Amanda's tears flowed faster. Of course not. This was just, it didn't mean anything. 6 months of weekly hotel meetings doesn't mean anything. I asked, my voice tinged with disbelief. The $8,000 spent on dinners and hotel rooms doesn't mean anything. The constant lies to both your spouses don't mean anything. Derek made a final desperate attempt to control the situation. Everyone is watching. Can we please take this somewhere private? Let them watch. Richard said, his professional composure completely gone, now replaced by raw hurt and anger. Let them see what kind of people you are. The confrontation continued to escalate, attracting more attention. Hotel security eventually approached, requesting we take the disturbance elsewhere. As we moved to the lobby, Derek grabbed my arm, attempting to separate me from the group. Elsa, you've made your point. Now stop this madness and let me explain. I pulled my arm free, stepping back to address both Derek and Amanda, now surrounded by curious onlookers in the elegant hotel lobby. There's nothing to explain. I have every text, every call, every hotel receipt. I know about the weekend in Chicago when you were supposedly at a sales conference. I know about the bracelet you bought her for Valentine's Day with our joint credit card. Amanda turned to Derek, shock replacing tears. You said that was from your personal account. So you knew he was married and did this anyway? Richard asked his wife, his voice heavy with disgust. The unraveling continued, their deceptions exposed not just to us, but to each other. Lies they had told their spouses, lies they had told each other, all coming to light in the most public way possible. Hotel guests paused to watch the spectacle, some discreetly filming with their phones. Derek made one last attempt to salvage something from the wreckage. Elsa, please. 7 years of marriage deserves better than this public humiliation. Let me take you home. We can work through this. I looked at him. Really looked at the man I had loved and trusted, and felt nothing but cold clarity. Our marriage ended the moment you decided to betray it. I'm not going anywhere with you. I turned and walked out of the hotel alone, leaving Derek calling after me, Amanda sobbing dramatically, and Richard demanding answers from both of them. The cool afternoon air hit my face as I stepped outside, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe freely. The weight of suspicion and deception was lifted, replaced by the stark but clean pain of truth. Driving away from the hotel, I allowed myself to feel everything I'd been suppressing during the confrontation. The heartbreak, the anger, the relief, the vindication. Tears streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of weakness or defeat. They were the release of emotions too powerful to contain any longer. I had exposed their affair exactly as I'd planned. The private betrayal was now public knowledge, And though my marriage was over, I had reclaimed my power in its ending. The drive from the lakeside hotel to my best friend Natalie's apartment passed in a blur. The calculated calm that had carried me through the confrontation began to fracture, revealing the raw emotions underneath. By the time I pulled into her driveway, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn off the ignition. Natalie was waiting for me just as she'd promised. One look at my face told her everything. She wrapped me in a fierce hug as soon as I stepped through her door, letting me collapse into the first genuine comfort I'd felt in months. "It's done," I whispered against her shoulder. "I did it exactly like I planned." "Come sit down," she said gently, leading me to her couch. "Tell me everything when you're ready." The emotions came in waves, triumph and vindication followed by crushing grief and uncertainty. I'd held myself together through weeks of planning and hours of confrontation, but now in the safety of my friend's presence, I allowed myself to fall apart. Natalie listened without judgment as I recounted every detail of the afternoon's events, from Richard's stunned appearance to Derek's desperate attempts to regain control of the situation. "They looked so shocked, Natalie, like they couldn't believe their perfect little affair bubble had burst. And the way other people were watching, some were even recording it on their phones. By tomorrow, everyone in their professional circles will know." "How do you feel?" she asked simply. I considered the question, trying to sort through the tangle of emotions. Relieved, devastated, powerful, empty, all of it at once. My phone had been buzzing constantly since I left the hotel. 27 missed calls from Derek. Dozens of text messages ranging from apologetic to angry to pleading. I showed Natalie one of the latest, "Please come home so we can talk about this like adults. What you did today was cruel and unnecessary." She read it with raised eyebrows. "He's calling you cruel after months of cheating." "He never expected consequences," I said. "At least not public ones." Around 7 in the evening, I decided it was time to go home, not to reconcile, but to face Derek and begin the process of ending our marriage officially. Natalie offered to come with me, but this was something I needed to do alone. "I'll keep my phone on," she insisted. "Call me if you need anything, any time of night." I drove home slowly, rehearsing what I would say, preparing for Derek's likely arguments and manipulations. The house was dark when I arrived, but his car was in the driveway. I took a deep breath and walked inside. Derek was sitting in the living room, the room illuminated only by a single lamp. He looked up when I entered, his face showing evidence of his own emotional turmoil, eyes red-rimmed, hair disheveled, the polished sales executive facade completely gone. "You humiliated me today," he said without preamble. "In front of colleagues, potential clients. Do you have any idea what you've done to my reputation, my career?" I set my purse down calmly. "Do you have any idea what you've done to our marriage, my trust, our future?" "An affair is a private matter between spouses," he insisted, standing up. "It should have been handled privately. Like you were handling it privately with Amanda every Wednesday, in the same hotel, so privately that half the wait staff at Bella Notte knew you as a couple." He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "It wasn't serious, Elsa. Just a physical thing. It didn't mean anything. 6 months of deception doesn't mean anything. Spending our money that could have gone toward the family we were supposedly trying to build, doesn't mean anything. You're being dramatic. It was just sex." "It was betrayal," I corrected him. "Complete and calculated betrayal. And don't insult me by pretending it was just physical. I saw the texts, Derek. I miss you when we're apart. No one understands me like you do. Those aren't messages about meaningless sex." He changed tactics, his voice softening. "I made a mistake. A terrible mistake. But we can work through this. 7 years of marriage deserves a second chance." "You didn't make a mistake," I said firmly. "You made thousands of individual choices. Every text, every lie about working late, every hotel reservation, those were all choices to betray me. And yes, 7 years of marriage deserved better than that." Derek moved closer, reaching for my hands. I stepped back, maintaining the distance between us. His expression hardened slightly at my rejection. So that's it. You're throwing away everything we built because of one indiscretion. One. I laughed humorlessly. Try 27 hotel meetings. Try 94 dinner dates. Try 138 phone calls, longer than 30 minutes. I have it all documented, Derek. Every single betrayal. His face paled as he realized the extent of my investigation. You've been tracking me all this time. Since I found the lubricant and pills in your car. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? That I'd just continue being the clueless wife while you built a separate life with her? The mention of the items that started my investigation triggered something in Derek. His demeanor changed defensive anger, replacing his attempt at reconciliation. Maybe if you hadn't been so obsessed with getting pregnant, I wouldn't have needed to look elsewhere, he said coldly. Do you have any idea how unsexy it is to have sex only when some app says it's time to be treated like a sperm donor instead of a husband? The cruel words hit their mark, but I refused to show how deeply they wounded me. Is that why you sabotaged our attempts to conceive? All those times you were too tired or too stressed during my fertile window, but had plenty of energy for hotel afternoons with Amanda. His silence confirmed my suspicion. Were you sleeping with both of us at the same time, Derek, coming home to me after being with her? It wasn't like that, he said, but his eyes slid away from mine. Then what was it like? Explain it to me. When he couldn't answer, I continued, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions. I've already spoken with a divorce attorney. I'm filing first thing tomorrow morning. I've documented everything, the affair, the financial expenditures on your mistress using our joint accounts, everything. My attorney thinks it will be a fairly straightforward process given the circumstances. You've already talked to a lawyer. Derek's shock seemed genuine. Before even giving me a chance to explain, I gave you months of chances, Derek. Every night you came home late was a chance to tell the truth. Every weekend you disappeared was an opportunity for honesty. You chose deception every single time. The reality of the situation finally seemed to penetrate his defensive shell. He sank back onto the couch, the fight draining out of him. What happens now? Now I pack what I need for the next few days and stay with Natalie while you figure out somewhere else to live. I want you out of the house by the weekend. You're kicking me out of my own home. Our home, I corrected. The home I kept clean and maintained while you were spending afternoons in hotels. The home where I waited up for you, worried about you, loved you. And yes, I want you gone. I moved past him toward our bedroom, determined to pack quickly and escape the suffocating atmosphere of the house that no longer felt like home. Derek followed, watching from the doorway, as I efficiently filled a suitcase with clothes and essential items. What about all our plans? He asked, his voice smaller now. The future we talked about. I paused, a framed photo of our wedding day in my hands. We looked so happy, so certain of our future together. I placed it face down on the dresser. Those plans died every time you chose her over me. Every lie, every deception was another nail in the coffin of our future. As I zipped my suitcase closed, Derek made one final attempt to salvage something. I do love you, Elsa. Despite everything, I never stopped loving you. I looked at him, Shilly looked at the man I had built my life around, and felt nothing but a hollow ache where love had once lived. If this is your version of love, Derek, I'd rather be alone. I wheeled my suitcase past him, pausing in the hallway where photos of our life together lined the walls, holidays, vacations, celebrations that now seemed like scenes from someone else's life. I'll have my attorney contact yours. Please be gone by Saturday. As the drive back to Natalie's was easier than I expected. Despite the painful confrontation, I felt the first stirrings of something unexpected: freedom. The constant anxiety of suspicion, the exhausting effort of pretending everything was normal, the emotional labor of maintaining our perfect image, it was all over. My marriage had ended in the most dramatic way possible. But as I drove away from the house and the husband I no longer recognized, I realized that the ending had actually begun months ago. Today was just the final acknowledgement of what had already been lost. The week following the hotel confrontation passed in a blur of practical arrangements and emotional aftershocks. Derek's desperate calls eventually subsided, replaced by terse text messages about logistics and property division. News of our separation spread quickly through our social and professional circles, fueled by eyewitness accounts from the hotel and the inevitable gossip that follows public scandal. My attorney, Judith Winters, was worth every penny of her substantial retainer. She moved quickly to file divorce papers citing adultery with extensive documentation. "You've done my job for me," she commented, reviewing my meticulously organized evidence. "Most clients come in with suspicions. You've brought me a complete case." On Thursday, just one day after the confrontation, my phone lit up with a call from an unexpected source, Derek's boss, Martin Caldwell. "Elsa, it's Martin. Do you have a moment to talk?" My stomach tightened. Martin had always been friendly at company events, but we weren't close enough for personal calls. "Yes, of course." "I'll be direct," he said after an awkward pause. "There's a situation at the office following yesterday's incident. Derek claims there's been a misunderstanding, but several clients have contacted me with concerns, including Richard Lewis." I took a deep breath. "What has Derek told you?" "That you're going through a difficult time and imagined an affair. That Richard Lewis's wife is just a client he was having a business meeting with." Martin's tone made it clear he doubted this explanation. "Given the circumstances, I wanted to hear your perspective." For a moment, I considered staying out of Derek's professional consequences. It wasn't my responsibility to manage the fallout in his career. But the audacity of his lies, claiming I had imagined the affair, pushed me over the edge. "I have extensive documentation of their affair," I said carefully. "Phone records, credit card statements, hotel receipts, photographs. I'd be happy to forward some of it to you if that would help clarify the situation." Martin sighed heavily. "That won't be necessary. Richard Lewis has already shared some rather compelling evidence with me. He's also withdrawn his company from consideration as a client and informed several other potential clients of the situation." "I'm sorry about the lost business," I said, genuinely regretful about the collateral damage to innocent colleagues. "Don't be. Professional ethics matter in our industry. Derek created this situation, not you." He paused again. "For what it's worth, Elsa, everyone here is shocked. You were always such a perfect couple." I laughed softly, the sound tinged with sadness. Appearances can be deceiving. After hanging up, I learned from mutual connections that Derek had been placed on administrative leave pending an ethics review. His affair with the wife of a potential client represented a significant conflict of interest and potential breach of professional standards. The public nature of the confrontation made it impossible for the company to ignore. Meanwhile, news about Amanda and Richard filtered through mutual acquaintances. Amanda had reportedly moved in with her sister after Richard changed the locks on their home. Unlike Derek, she wasn't facing professional consequences. Her position wasn't directly tied to her husband's business, but the social fallout was substantial. Friends were choosing sides, with most supporting Richard, who had quickly retained his own divorce attorney. Our social circle fractured along predictable lines. Longtime mutual friends felt obligated to hear both sides, though most eventually distanced themselves from Derek once the extent of his deception became clear. My close friends rallied around me with support and practical assistance, helping me move my remaining belongings from our home to a small apartment I leased on a 6-month term. Some acquaintances questioned my approach to exposing the affair, suggesting a private confrontation would have been more dignified. "Did you really need to create such a spectacle?" asked one friend's husband at a dinner I attended 2 weeks after the confrontation. "Couldn't you have just filed for divorce quietly?" "Perhaps," I acknowledged. But after months of being deceived, I wanted the truth to be undeniable and public. Their affair was real, with real consequences. Why should those consequences be private when the betrayal affected so many aspects of my life? My parents, who lived in another state, were supportive but concerned. We just worry you might regret such a public approach when the dust settles, my mother said during one of our daily calls. Divorces are painful enough without an audience. I know it seems dramatic, I told her, but after living with secrets and lies for so long, the transparency feels necessary, healing even. And it was healing in its way. The public nature of the confrontation made it impossible for Derek to minimize what had happened or convince me to reconcile without addressing the fundamental breach of trust. The exposure created a clean break where a private confrontation might have left room for manipulation and gaslighting. The emotional toll became more apparent as weeks passed. I experienced waves of grief for the marriage and future I had lost, anger at the betrayal, and anxiety about starting over at 32. I began seeing a therapist, Dr. Elaine Foster, to help process the trauma. Many people in your situation struggle with shame, Dr. Foster observed during one session. Despite being the wronged party, they internalize a sense that they were somehow insufficient or the affair wouldn't have happened. I don't feel shame, I realized, somewhat surprised by the revelation. I feel grief and anger, but not shame. Maybe because I exposed the affair rather than hiding it. That's an interesting perspective, she replied. The public confrontation may have helped you externalize the betrayal, place it clearly on the shoulders of the people responsible, rather than questioning your own worth. Those therapy sessions became anchors in the turbulent weeks following the separation. Dr. Foster helped me recognize that my methodical approach to exposing the affair, while unusual, was consistent with my personality and values. I had always been detailed and thorough in my professional life. Those same traits had served me when my personal life imploded. 1 month after the hotel confrontation, I was grocery shopping when I turned a corner and came face to face with Derek. He looked different, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, and none of the confident polish he'd always maintained. For a moment, we both froze, unsure of the protocol for this first unplanned encounter. "Elsa," he said finally, his voice hoarse. "You look well." "Thank you," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. "How are you?" He gestured vaguely. "Staying with my brother until I find a place. The company review concluded yesterday. I've been put on probation, lost my bonus for the quarter." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, surprised to find I genuinely meant it despite everything. An awkward silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken words and emotions too complex for a grocery store aisle. "Is she worth it?" The question slipped out before I could stop it, the one thing I still needed to know. Derek's eyes met mine directly for the first time. "No," he said simply. "Nothing was worth losing what we had." I nodded, a strange sense of closure washing over me. "Take care of yourself, Derek." As I walked away, I realized something significant. I had spoken to my husband of 7 years, as if he were a distant acquaintance. The man who had shared my bed, my dreams, my life plans, now felt like a stranger. The realization was both sad and liberating. When I mentioned the encounter to Dr. Foster, she asked how it made me feel. "Like I'm further along in healing than I realized," I answered truthfully. "Seeing him didn't destroy me. It just confirmed that we're on separate paths now." "And Amanda," she asked, "have you had any contact with her?" "No," I said firmly. She made her choices knowing I existed, knowing she was helping destroy my marriage. I have nothing to say to her. I later learned through mutual connections that Derek and Amanda's relationship had dissolved shortly after being exposed. Without the thrill of secrecy and forbidden connection, facing the real-world consequences of their choices, whatever had drawn them together hadn't survived the harsh light of public scrutiny. The irony wasn't lost on me. They had risked everything for a relationship that couldn't withstand reality. Meanwhile, I was slowly rebuilding my life on a foundation of painful but necessary truth. 3 months after I discovered the lubricant and pills that unraveled my marriage, I stood in my new apartment surveying the space I'd created for myself. It was smaller than the house Derek and I had shared, but it felt more authentically mine. Clean lines, thoughtfully arranged furniture, artwork I'd always loved, but Derek had dismissed as too abstract. The space reflected the woman I was becoming rather than the wife I had been. The divorce proceedings were moving forward without major complications. Derek, perhaps recognizing the futility of fighting given the evidence against him, had agreed to a relatively fair division of assets. The house was on the market, and we'd already received a promising offer. My attorney was confident the divorce would be finalized within another 3 months, allowing me to close this chapter completely before the 1-year mark of discovery. Professionally, I'd thrown myself back into work with renewed focus and creativity. The detailed planning and execution skills that had served me so well in exposing the affair translated perfectly to my marketing campaigns. My boss had noticed the change, commenting that my recent strategies showed bold thinking and meticulous implementation. I'd even been assigned to lead our agency's pitch for a major new client, an opportunity that would likely mean promotion if successful. My apartment doorbell rang, interrupting my thoughts. Natalie stood outside, holding a bottle of wine and a houseplant. "Housewarming gift number 2?" she announced, handing me the pothos in its decorative pot. Supposedly impossible to kill, even for those of us with black thumbs. "It's perfect," I laughed, leading her inside. "And much appreciated. This place still feels a bit empty." "It's coming along beautifully," she insisted, looking around the space. "Besides, empty space isn't necessarily a bad thing. Room to grow, right?" We settled on my new couch, glasses of wine in hand, catching up on the weeks since we'd last had time for a proper visit. Natalie had been my rock throughout the entire ordeal, but recently our conversations had shifted from the crisis of my marriage to normal friendship topics, her job challenges. My new apartment books we'd read, shows we'd watched. The change felt significant, a sign that my life was rebalancing. "So," Natalie said, after a comfortable lull in conversation, "have you heard the latest about Richard and Amanda?" I shook my head. Though I'd intentionally avoided seeking information about Derek and Amanda, occasional updates filtered through our social connections. Their divorce was finalized last week. Record speed, apparently. She didn't contest anything, just wanted out quickly. And she hesitated, clearly weighing whether to continue. "And," I prompted, "Richard's dating someone new. Has been for about a month, according to Jen, who works in his building. Apparently he seems happy." I absorbed this information, surprised by my own reaction, genuine gladness for a man I'd met only once under the most difficult circumstances imaginable. Good for him. He deserves happiness after what she put him through. "What about you?" Natalie asked cautiously. "Have you thought about dating again?" I swirled the wine in my glass, considering the question. "Not yet. I'm still processing everything, still learning who I am outside of that relationship. Besides, the trust issues are—" I trailed off, unable to fully articulate the complexity of rebuilding faith in relationships after such profound betrayal. "Completely understandable," Natalie finished for me. "There's no timeline for this kind of healing." Later that evening, after Natalie had left, I found myself looking through old photos on my laptop, not of Derek and me, but of myself before our relationship. College graduation. My first apartment. A hiking trip with friends. The woman in those photos looked back at me with confident eyes, unaware of the journey ahead, but ready for adventure nonetheless. I realized I was finding my way back to her, not unchanged, certainly more cautious, but also stronger and clearer about what I wanted from life. The experience had forced me to confront difficult truths about relationships, about trust, about my own boundaries and values. The following week, I bumped into Richard Lewis at a local coffee shop. The coincidence startled us both, but after an initial moment of awkwardness, he greeted me with genuine warmth. "Elsa, right? How are you doing?" he asked, his expression showing real concern. "I'm doing better every day," I answered honestly. "And you?" "The same. It gets easier, doesn't it? Though I wouldn't have believed that 3 months ago." We chatted briefly about the practical aspects of rebuilding new living arrangements, legal proceedings, mutual acquaintances who hadn't known how to react to our situations. There was a comfortable understanding between us, a shared experience that required no explanation. "I never properly thanked you," he said as our conversation wound down, for having the courage to bring everything into the open. It was painful, God knows, but necessary. I sometimes wonder if I made the right choice, I admitted. The public confrontation, I mean. It was so dramatic. Richard considered this, his expression thoughtful. Would a private confrontation have given them the opportunity to minimize what they did, to rewrite the narrative, to make you doubt yourself? His questions resonated deeply, articulating concerns I'd struggled to express even to myself. Yes, exactly. I needed the clarity, the undeniable reality of seeing them together, of having witnesses. Then you made the right choice for you, he said simply. Different betrayals require different responses. There's no universal playbook for this. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of validation I hadn't realized I still needed. Richard's perspective as the only other person who truly understood the specific pain of that hotel room revelation carried unique weight. That evening, I made a decision I'd been contemplating for weeks. I scheduled a consultation with a fertility specialist to discuss options for having a child on my own. The dream of motherhood had always been mine, not just something I shared with Derek, and I wasn't willing to abandon it because my marriage had failed. Dr. Wilson, the reproductive endocrinologist, was refreshingly direct during our initial consultation. Single motherhood by choice is increasingly common, she explained. And at 32, you have excellent fertility markers. We have several paths we could explore, from sperm donation to embryo adoption. Driving home from that appointment, I felt a surprising lightness. For the first time since discovering Derek's betrayal, I was making plans for my future that felt entirely my own, not reactions to his deception, not rebuilding what was lost, but creating something new that aligned with my deepest values and desires. When the divorce was finalized 2 months later, exactly 7 months after the hotel confrontation, I marked the occasion with a small gathering of close friends. Not a celebration exactly, an acknowledgement of survival and new beginnings. A toast, my friend Lauren said, raising her glass to Elsa, who faced the unimaginable with courage and came through stronger. Later, as guests were leaving, Natalie lingered behind. I've been meaning to ask you something, she said. Do you regret it? The way you handled everything, the public exposure. I considered the question carefully, wanting to give an honest answer. No, I said finally. It was painful and messy, and maybe there were less dramatic options. But I needed to reclaim power in a situation where I'd been made powerless through deception. The public nature of it forced everyone to acknowledge the reality rather than the convenient fiction Derek had created. That makes perfect sense, Natalie nodded. I think I'd have done the same in your position. That night alone in my apartment, I wrote a letter to my future self, a reminder of what I'd learned, what I'd survived, and what I hoped for in the years ahead. I sealed it with the intention of reading it on the 1-year anniversary of discovery. The journey from that moment of finding hidden evidence in Derek's car to creating a new life for myself had been neither straight nor easy. There had been days of crushing grief, moments of blinding rage, periods of exhausting uncertainty. But through it all, I had remained true to myself, to my need for honesty, my refusal to accept deception, my determination to face reality, however painful. In exposing Derek and Amanda's affair so publicly, I had refused to carry the burden of their betrayal in silence. I had forced accountability in the clearest possible terms. And though the process had been painful, it had also been necessary for my healing. As I prepare to enter the next chapter of my life, officially divorced, considering single motherhood, building a career on my own terms, I carry the lessons of this experience with me. Trust should be given cautiously. Patterns reveal truth more reliably than words. And sometimes the most dramatic response to betrayal is exactly what's needed to break free from its power. Have you ever been faced with a situation where you had to choose between quiet dignity and public truth? What would you have done in my position? Would you have confronted them privately or created the scene I did at the hotel? Leave a comment below sharing your thoughts or experiences. And if this story resonated with you, Please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more real-life stories, and share with someone who might need to know they're not alone in facing betrayal. Thank you for listening to my journey from deception to truth, from heartbreak to healing. Remember, sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most authentic beginnings.